Good evening. I call to order the Monroe Public Schools Board of Education special work session. Today is Monday, April 13th, 2026, and the time is 5:30 PM. Jamie, can we have roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Heck.
Here.
Mr. Jenkins.
Here.
Ms. Myers.
Here.
Mr. Sabadini.
Here.
Mrs. Tarasi.
Here.
Mrs. Vincent.
Here.
Mrs. Williams.
Here.
Can we please stand for the pledge? Before we begin, please note that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. There are 2 cameras in use this evening, as usual. One focused on the Board of Education, another that may be used during any public commentary or presentations. By participating in this meeting, you acknowledge that you may be captured on video. Thank you for your understanding for joining us tonight. Next is discussion items, and I'll turn it over to Superintendent Shaw.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. So we have our first item we're going to talk about tonight is the 6-8 ELA curriculum. Andrea and her team are here and have a presentation to go through. So, Andrea, it's all yours.
Good evening. I do have a team with me tonight, so we're going to all kind of be up here to tag team, and as we go through, if there's questions that you have and one of them can answer better than I can, they're going to jump in because they've had some experience with the program over the last couple of months. So we have some coaches here and some classroom teachers with us. Middle school administrators are here as well. So we're going to go ahead and go through this. I believe you have, do you have these slides? Okay, and so some of these I am going to go through a little bit faster just for the sake of time, but if there's something that you need us to go back and follow up on, we can. So tonight, our presentation purpose is to provide you with an overview of the HMH into Literature pilot and our proposed adoption for grades 6 through 8. We're going to review some alignment of that grades 6 through 8 ELA with our K-5 ELA and demonstrate how that K-8 alignment will strengthen our literacy outcomes across the district. Just to give you a quick review of this literacy process, at the end of the 2025 school year last year, our district received the 35M grant, and with that money, we opted to purchase HMH into Reading as our core curriculum program for grades K through 5. And then beginning in September of this school year, we continued our search for our middle school ELA, so grades 6 through 8 began their comprehensive review to identify some curriculum that met current instructional needs. Teachers looked at various programs that included Amplify, Study Sync, My Perspectives, and HMH's Into Literature. And after reviewing some of the programs and vetting some of the resources included, HMH Into Literature has emerged as the top choice due to its alignment with that K-5 program. For our grades 9 through 12, that ELA department also looked at some materials this year, but they did not go as far into their exploration of ELA curriculum materials, so they're going to continue that work in the next school year. But HMH Into Literature is also a program that they are looking at. So currently in our district, as we look at our data and we examine the needs, we have identified this consistent, a need for a consistent K-8 ELA curriculum across our district in order to create that vertical alignment of ELA instruction K-8. And we also have a need to make sure that our curriculum K-8 is rigorous, standards aligned, and grounded in our science of reading. This slide, I did include an overview video. However, for the sake of time, I'm not going to play it, but we will share a digital version of this. And it was also in the there's a link to it in the brochure that you were sent, or the form that we gave you. So HMH Into Literature is a comprehensive ELA program, so it includes all of those components of reading and writing, grammar, vocabulary instruction, and it is for grades 6 through 8. So Into Literature is the second portion. K-5 is Into Reading. Into Literature is 6-12. It focuses on strengthening reading, writing, speaking, and critical thinking skills, and is standards aligned and research based. You'll hear us often talk about Ed Reports. That is a site that we go to consult where they've reviewed different curriculum programs according to 3 different gateways. And those gateways are there for you. In the green, Into Literature was green, 612, with a 90% or higher meeting expectations for each of those gateways. So that's kind of when we vet our resources, we look at that. And if something is not meeting expectations, we pretty much say, we're not going to go further into looking at that curriculum if it's not meeting those expectations. So Into Literature did successfully meet all of those gateways. That instructional design with HMH Into Literature is very similar to what we see in the Into Reading instructional design with our text-centered instruction that includes engaging literature selections for students. That writing, grammar, and vocabulary development is integrated into each of the lessons that teachers are teaching in their classrooms. And built into the lessons themselves are scaffolded supports for our learners, including our English language learners, and we have a high population of English language learners, and students that are needing intervention. So all of that is built in. Teachers aren't going other places to search for supplemental resources to support those learners. These I'm going to go through fairly quickly just so we can get to our teachers because they're going to talk a little bit about what it looks like in their classroom. But part of that instructional design is there's a whole class instruction component where students are looking at an analyze and apply lesson. That's the whole group. There's a mentor text that serves as an authentic writing model for students and a culminating task. So they'll be looking at this text and then they have a culminating writing task at the end. There's opportunities for small group instruction where students can work either with the teacher in a small group or they can work amongst themselves where they're collaborating with their peers for each portion of the unit and they think critically across related texts. And thinking across texts is something that's really important. And we've noticed that when we look at our iReady data, we look at our state assessment data, that is something that our students have struggled with, is being able to make connections across texts. And so within HMH, they're constantly doing that. We also have opportunities for independent learning to happen. There's a reader's choice where there are 4 to 6 short read recommendations that are offered per unit for the independent reading time, and they provide opportunities for students to have some agency and choice. So we think about like kind of choice within that choice. So here's 4 different options for them to look at. All HMH units are standards aligned and build upon skills. So at the start of every unit that students are introduced to, there's 2 critical standards-based skills, and they continue to practice those skills throughout the teaching of that unit. So for example, in the picture that's here, in this unit, students would be thinking about analyzing point of view and analyzing word choice, and those things would continue to come up throughout the entire unit. There's also vocabulary instruction that's embedded into each of these lessons. So we're looking at exposure to vocabulary that's grade level appropriate and aligned with grade level content standards. And it's paired with strategies so kids aren't just seeing something in isolation, they're able to put it into context. We also have, and this is something the teachers are going to talk a little bit more about. They're excited about this one, the grammar practice. Grammar instruction is built into these lessons, and that is an area where we definitely felt like we had some gaps in our instruction. So there's explicit instruction in grammar. It's embedded within each of the reading and the writing lessons. Students have opportunities to practice those skills daily. There are also supplemental resources. The Ed platform has a plethora of resources that teachers can pull from. And that grammar instruction, again, is aligned with their grade level content standards. And of course, as we're using the program, we need to be able to look at assessing our students and then gathering data, whether that's formative or summative. So if it comes day-to-day assessments, that's our formative piece, or our summative, if we're looking at an end-of-unit assessment or end-of-a-week assessment, those things are all built into the HMH platform with some data-driven instructional tools so teachers can look at that assessment results and it can sort kids for them and they can say, here are the areas where kids are excelling, here's some areas where there's some gaps and I need to maybe revisit these pieces. There's progress monitoring tools that teachers can use to guide instruction. And then, as you're well aware, we are getting ready to take, some have already started with our high stakes testing, our M-STEP. In the past, we have created units where teachers will do test prep and so it's something additional to their actual curriculum, and they'll had to run through and do test prep and questions and read different passages with students. And something that's been really nice about Into Literature is that these units are designed to prepare students for high stakes testing. So there is no stopping and or trying to find an additional time to weave in another article or another material for them. They just can continue to teach. And we know that the practice activities, those are modeled after the types of questions that students see on high stakes tests. So our teachers have said we feel like we're preparing kids every day, not just to become better readers, but we're also hitting those same types of questions that they see on those tests. And then it is a blended learning. So in the quote that you saw, you see some digital materials and you see print materials. So everything that is available on that ed platform that's digital is also in print. So students do have workbooks that they can use, and a lot of our teachers, as they'll talk to, use those workbooks right now. It's very similar to how in our math program we have an online component, and we have also then everything in print. So that digital platform is interactive. It can be used for students, but there's also the print materials that can be used classroom or individual depending on the need. So you heard us talk about some of that alignment with K-5 ELA. We really feel there's power in that vertical alignment because it's a seamless transition. As students are coming from elementary, they're exposed to HMH's Into Reading, K-5. They'll be coming right into middle school already with the familiarity of the program and the instructional practices, the routines that are in place. The skills that are built upon each year are going to flow seamlessly as students go from one building to the next. And just creating that construction or consistent instructional framework, K-8, shared literacy practices, and increasing those opportunities for our teachers to collaborate, K-8. And then I'm going to kind of skip over this because you have, I believe, the quote, the cost proposal. So this is just listing out what that includes, but I don't think I need to go through all of that for you. I do just want to point out, and some of the teachers are going to talk about this, Writable is that platform that students use for writing. It is an integrated writing instruction platform, and they can receive some feedback using the Writable platform. So I'll keep that up there, but our teachers are going to talk a little bit more about that. And then PD, professional development, is a part of that quote that you received, so you'll see what types of professional development are offered through that. And we know that that's going to be important for teachers. It is a big shift, just like it's been a shift in K-5, it'll be a shift 6-8, not only in the materials that teachers are using, but in the way in which they're teaching. So here's the heart of it. Why HMH Into Literature? So why are we coming to you and saying this is the program? We do believe that it is a high quality program. It is standards aligned. It includes those engaging and rigorous texts for students. We actually have some student quotes later on where they've talked about that. It has some proven effectiveness in supporting literacy growth. And then, as you are probably aware, we have the dyslexia law legislation that is now K-12 in Michigan. And they released a list of approved curriculum programs, and HMH Into Reading and HMH Into Literature are both on that approved state list. So in the classrooms, the sixth grade classrooms, they had the opportunity to take the iReady diagnostic again in the spring. Our middle school students did not take, they don't take this round of the iReady, but looking at where we started with our sixth grade classrooms from fall to spring in the rooms that are piloting this, they experienced an average of about a 10% gain in their proficiency, so students moving into being proficient, and then there was a 15% reduction in their number of students that were classified as not proficient. So I am going to turn over. Do you guys have any questions for me so far before I turn over to some of our coaches and teachers to talk a little bit?
Let's see. I wrote down, how does it address the students that are 1 or more year behind? And I know that was identified. I think Angela had given us some information on that before. How does this address that?
So built into each of the lessons, there are additional scaffolds and supports. So if students are behind, they can look at some of the Lexile levels of text. There's also on the ed platform, there are places where you can go in and find some other resources to support your students who may need some additional practice with skills. So there are places where you can find differentiated pieces. I know they're going to talk a little bit more
Okay.
about it, so if you guys want to chime in at all, feel free
Yeah,
to.
it-
But
Can they use, say, someone's coming into 7th grade and they're reading at a 5th grade level, or say 4th, would take your pick. Could they use, because if you use the same, the materials from 4th or 5th grade where they're operating at, and use that at this level or not?
they do have, our teachers do have access as part of that digital, they can select other grade levels. So they have, once we have those teacher licenses, they can, like our 7th and 8th grade
Okay.
teachers can go back
So they
to the
can
other
go
grades.
pull from ELM
They can.
from elementary. Okay. The other question, it sounds like I understand that there's materials. What would be the percentage of technology-based to non-technology time that they're finding in their pilot were they spending?
I'm gonna let you guys talk, because
Anybody
I
have
see a
a-
lot of
Well,
paper.
that depends on the teacher. I'm
Okay.
personally, which I'm gonna talk about, I don't use it that much. And I use
Okay.
both.
Okay.
I've used both, but
So we'll
I
hold
love
that
the-
question for when you all are ready. So, okay.
It does come down to a lot of the teacher preference, but a lot of the classrooms that we've seen, they're using the workbooks with students,
Yeah.
the paper pencil.
My other question was related to the same first question I asked, but it was related to the grammar grade level content standards. Again, if students are 1 to 2 more years
They can
behind,
pull from.
how are they able to do that? So maybe that will be part of your presentation.
They
as
can
well.
pull from other grades, but there are also supplemental sheets that are still aligned to grade level, but are presented in a different way
Yeah,
for
'cause it-
students.
It says it's aligned with
Yes.
those grade level standards.
So
and
what it looks like would be different depending on where the student is, but still aligned to those grade level content standards. The scaffolds and the way that it's presented would just be
So I'm
different.
sure you'll
But
address
they'll-
that in your
yeah, she's
presentation.
gonna
I
talk a
keep
lot about
looking at
grammar.
you, but whoever's talking back there.
Yes.
The last thing was, when you're talking about professional development, are those days already what's baked into the calendar? You're going to use those that are already on there? Or would this require addition into what's already on the calendar for your school?
You wouldn't see additional necessarily. There could be an option. So let's say that the middle school says we really are interested and we want to do something different. We could potentially do something for them and book it on a different day. What we've seen some buildings do also is use the time, like there's something built in for our coaches. And if our coaches are working one-on-one with a teacher, they can also virtually meet with a coach from HMH and do a session with them together, all during their plan, teach, debrief cycle.
Because it affects instructional days for the students, which we just addressed.
Right,
on
we
the
wouldn't be
calendar,
adding
so-
any days to our calendar or saying like, oh, this is going to be a professional development day. It might be the focus of one of those days. So when
Okay,
we
that
have a
was my
full day, we
question,
may
yeah.
book someone to come into ours, but
Right.
we wouldn't be scheduling an additional day
Yeah,
for
that's what I
that.
meant. Do you have
No.
enough time
Yes.
within the current schedule to be able to implement this?
Yep.
That was the question.
Yeah.
That was it. That's
Yep.
all I have. Thank you.
Okay,
I got one for you, Andrea.
sure.
I remember we had a great talk last year with K through 5. I think you made a good choice. You covered all the bases as far as I was concerned. One thing about the 6 through 8 though, I realize these kids miss something. And I was wondering, is it going to be possible for some of these kids, well, all these kids, to find a way in classroom time for them to start learning cursive and maybe work on some of their phonics? I realize Lucy Calkins didn't emphasize that. Is it going to be possible for us to help those kids get the cursive and improve their phonics? I mean, could that be part of the overall picture of this?
It could be. I will say, as we begin to implement, it would be difficult to have a teacher learning to implement a program and then having them try to do additional things on top of that. But we do have our IE time, and some of that time could be devoted to those types of activities.
That would be nice if you guys can do that. I'm not trying to step on your toes, but these are just concerns of mine. And I'd love to see these kids, their phonics level to get a little bit higher.
Yeah, and I think
And-
given in a few years, we're going to see that the kids that are coming to them at the middle school, the needs are going to shift greatly.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
It's like, I realize you take all these tests and gosh darn it, if a kid can't read, he's not going to pass. If a kid can't read, he's not going to do well on the math either. And I'm wondering if there's a big connection between all of this, and that hopefully with this program, and like I asked about the cursive and the phonics,
Yeah.
that really we can make a big leap forward.
And they are already doing a lot of phonics work at the middle school
I
over the last
understood
couple of
that,
years. But
yeah.
yeah, I think that is something that we'll continue to target and continue to weave into what
Yeah, I've
they're.
talked to a lot of teachers, and a lot of them have been doing that, and I thank them for it. I guess I'm looking at this from the perspective more of an official position, that Monroe Public Schools is gonna do this as.
Yeah. And if we do move forward with purchasing this program, like we said, teachers will have access to those grade levels that came prior as part of that platform, so they can pull from those resources too, to use during that IE time.
Sounds great, thanks.
Andrea, one last question, hopefully. Because Cantrick has both fifth and sixth grades.
Yes.
You're going to have the K through 5 program, you're going to have the 6 through 8 programs.
Yes.
I think if I understand it correctly, these are close enough, there shouldn't be a lot of issues with.
They're really,
training.
yes, they're very close. Yeah. So if we were going to choosing this program is very seamless from K-5.
Okay, good.
All right. So I am going to go ahead and turn over because this is.
Hey, I'm Ashley, and
I'm Brooke.
and we're coaches at Cantrick. Unfortunately, none of our teachers could make it tonight, but oh, Miss Davis is here. Except she's not used to, she teaches math. She's here, but she teaches math. But none of our ELA teachers that are currently using into literature could make it. But they wanted to send statements, which are included in the slides. You can read them later, just to let you know how they're using it in their classrooms and the support that they have. So the first quote is from Angela Snyder and Caitlin Sobleski. And back in the fall, our sixth grade teachers had the opportunity to meet with the middle school teachers with some representatives from Into Literature. And these two teachers specifically fell in love instantly, came back and were like, Andrea, we want to start yesterday. And so she got them hooked up with the pilot. They started doing it and started talking, chitter chatter in the lunchroom. And some teachers came up to us and were like, hey, we heard they got the in. How do we get in? Like, we want to try this. And so the next quote you'll see is from someone who was like, hey, we want in. So they started a month or so later. And then some teachers came to us a month later and were like, hey, how come Buffy and Angela and Caitlin get to teach this? We want it. And so we call Andrea and she gets them the materials. And so it kind of spiraled. Like, there's a lot of excitement around it. They're seeing the growth and just like the conversations that students are being able to have are educational conversations based on the things that they're reading, the things that they're learning. And so yeah, it's kind of like been this fire. And to address the question of the fifth and the sixth grade, like, we're in both classrooms and it's pretty much the same format. Sixth grade has one workbook and fifth grade has two workbooks, right? Like truly, like, you wouldn't, it's a very seamless transition, which is really nice for our teachers too, because they are able to still collaborate amongst grade levels, even though the curriculum has a different name. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. I talk a lot.
No, you're fine. So
As
like,
you know, I've been here a million times.
we didn't want to like read every word and you have it in front of you, but like the main things, especially with this group, they love, and I think that the some of the eighth grade teachers are going to explain that love too, because I see the book in hand. But the grammar book is like the most beloved object in the classroom.
Yeah.
Like, the teachers love it. With a lot of our teachers, the teachers that we've interviewed have many years experience, and one thing that they really liked is that this, like Andrea said, the tier 1 leads right into M-STEP. So they don't have to do any fancy dance for M-STEP. All the stuff they're learning in tier 1, they're going to show what they know on M-STEP. And it's very seamless. And they thought that's going to show some good scores this year for us, having that experience. The kids are reacting. The kids are engaged. They don't have to pull teeth to get the kids engaged. I went into a classroom today and we'll talk about kid quotes too, but like, one pulled me over. He's like, look, I'm learning about phobias, and there's this type of phobia, and you can be scared of roller coasters. And like, it was this whole discussion. And he was like super excited about it. And I was looking through his thing and I saw annotation, and I just thought, yeah, I saw what the teachers are seeing. I'm seeing that engagement. And we'll talk more on that because there's funny stories there. But
Yeah. And then the other thing that the teachers really appreciate is everything is one it's found in one central hub. So you're not using this curriculum for grammar and this piece for word study and this piece over here for the comprehension. It's all encompassing. Everything is found in one place and it spirals, right? So you might teach this part of speech here and then it comes back again later and then it comes back again later. And they really appreciate that they don't have to see mastery immediately because they know it's going to come back around. And the kids like that too. They're like, oh, I remember this. So now they have the prior knowledge, which is also really important. We're not taking questions. I'm just kidding. I would take your questions.
You made that rule like
I did.
So before you go on, so you have into reading, into literature, right? Into literature begins third grade? Fourth?
No, six.
Is it at sixth grade? Okay, so it is, okay. Okay. I'm good then.
And I'm Jennifer Abram. I'm one of the coaches at the middle school, and I just wanted to share the excitement of our teachers around this pilot. We had all of our ELA teachers jump in with both feet. We began at the second semester, so we have been doing it a little shorter amount of time than our friends at Cantrick. But conversations around the work is robust, and there's excitement, and I believe the teachers are seeing movement with the students as well. And so Gretchen Elliott is here as one of our 7th grade ELA teachers, and Angela Orr is here representing the 8th grade, and I'm going to let them tell you about their experiences.
Yes, I bought my grammar book because you don't understand, not having grammar is not a way to go. So I was very excited. So I'm Gretchen Elliott. I have been at Monroe Middle School for 30 years, minus a year I took off when I had twins. So I have seen a lot. I teach 7th grade this year. I will loop with them and teach 8th grade next year. I have just this short little blurb before anybody gets upset. I was not a fan of Lucy Calkins. I never was a fan of Lucy Calkins. It did not have, in my mind, as an English major, it did not have what students needed. It was not comprehensive. It did not effectively teach students to read. It did not teach phonics, grammar, spelling, vocabulary. If we wanted to do that, we brought it in. And I mean, that's what I've done for years. Okay? With that being said, I do very much like this HMH. It is very comprehensive. I sat down yesterday. I was watching the Masters. I have a few notes. So, because I feel like this is just such an important thing. I mean, it is such an important thing. It does expose students to new and classical literature and authors. It promotes class discussion. It builds critical thinking skills. There is integrated vocabulary, grammar, and writing. It exposes students to a variety of texts. It builds upon itself. Students will continue to learn skills. It is teacher-friendly, and students have a physical textbook, which I feel is so very important. Yes. So at the middle school, we have been piloting this since mid-January, so approximately 3 months, and we are just wrapping up one unit. The title of that unit was Take Control. The essential question was, how do our actions define us? Which is a great question to ask 7th graders every single day. What we have done so far, just in this unit, we have read 3 realistic fiction short stories. We have read a Greek myth, The Flight of Icarus. We have read a poem about that myth, and we have read 2 informational texts. What we have written, and there's so much to choose from. I mean, whereas before we were limited, we have in my classroom written a letter of apology. We have written a poem. We have written a tribute to early American women aviators. We have written answers to story questions. We have annotated in the margins while reading, and we are in the process of writing an informational essay. In this one unit, we have covered, and I'm going to read quickly, vocabulary with every story and activities connected to that vocabulary. We've analyzed character traits and motivations. We've analyzed conflict, external and internal, analyzed setting, imagery, theme, plot, inferences, drawing conclusions, Greek and Latin prefixes and suffixes. We've analyzed mythology. You guys, I am tearing up. You just don't understand what I've been through. We have compared and contrasted, which is all of these skills are testing skills. We've learned to synthesize. We've talked about repetition, making prediction, Latin roots, citing evidence, author's purpose, connotation and denotation, flashback, personification, analyzing structure, chronological order, and context clues, just in this one unit. The grammar that has been covered. So not only do we have this grammar book, at the end of each story, there's 2 pages of grammar, and they connect it to the story that we just read. So in that book, and a little bit from here, I've done both, we've talked about clauses, commas, types of sentences, run-on sentences, simple and compound sentences, using precise language, possessive nouns, capitalization, and redundancy in text. Has it been easy? No. Our students are not. My students, sadly, this year are the lowest that I've ever had. These kids were 1st and 2nd grade during COVID. So it is not easy. Is it what the students need? Mine is a resounding yes. And we will get there. It's not, the magic right away solution, but it is so needed. With this curriculum at the elementary levels, it will get easier. Students will learn. Reading scores will improve. And my last line is, we cannot go back to Lucy Calkins. Any questions? No, I didn't bring it in. It's
very similar to what the K-5 looks like, where
it's in my car.
it's a bigger.
Yes. So my kids, at first balked, oh my goodness, we have to carry these around. And we learned to put it in our locker after class, and we learned to get it out prior to class and bring it. They can handle it. They can write in the text. It's theirs.
Does the grammar book for teachers, or is it a consumable?
So it is a consumable. We don't have one yet because we're piloting. So I've been putting it under the camera or making copies.
It is included in the,
So it will be included.
one of the things Brooke was sharing, a student with the workbook shared, well, everything's right here, like I don't lose anything. It's all right
It's a
here.
brick. You can't lose it.
Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am Angela Orr. I teach 8th grade at the middle school. So this is my 2nd year teaching, period. I mean, I taught 1 year math at the high school, but I was a sub. But this is my 2nd year teaching ELA. So I was able to experience Lucy Calkins the first year and a half, and obviously partially HMH. So I was able to see their impacts, and it's been a drastic difference for myself as far as my stress level and for the students. So I kind of separated my observations into 3 categories. So the instruction, how students apply what they've learned, and then the assessment piece. So for the instruction, I follow more of a hybrid structure. So I blend the digital and the physical resources. We do use our physical workbook. So it kind of blends the, I don't want to say old, but the traditional with the new. And the digital options are vast. It's literally, it's like a choose your own path. So it allows me whatever route I need to take for this group of students or to serve the needs of various groups of students. I can do that. I'm not limited to a one size fits all approach. So I can use the technology to drive my instruction delivery, to navigate student responses and get them more engaged. And then to use assessments efficiently and proactively to adapt instruction as needed. The texts are rigorous and they are grade level and above, which I think is needed. And it kind of, for lack of better words, forces a higher reach for the students, which they need to be exposed to those texts so they know they can reach for those. And it allows for these things that may seem like impossible for them because of, the history of their academics. It gives, like, to me, confidence for them, like, through challenge. So we're not shielding them from the challenge to make things easier. But we're actually, like, encouraging their confidence when it comes to, like, their reading and writing. I'm gonna jump to application. So, like I said about there are different pathways. So it's very, like, multifaceted, and I think it serves as a multifaceted curriculum for, like, very multifaceted students. So we kind of touched on Writable just a little bit, but Writable is, like, one of the differentiation pieces, and it doesn't just, like, address the, like, striving kids. It also addresses the kids that have, like, they need higher, like, learning challenges. So there are scaffolds in there. I've assigned or analyzed the text questions through there. So my students who are at, like, a third grade reading and comprehension level, they have, like, supports in the form of, like, sentence starters or additional prompts, just additional things to kind of aid them but not handicap them. So I do appreciate that resource, and I don't have to kind of, like, reinvent the wheel to access them and to get them to be able to access what they're learning. So it makes it, like, in reach for them. I will also say, like, I am glad we tested this out in the quarter that we did, because I've been able to kind of compare the curriculum to test prep, I guess, like the PSAT, and it's structured to prepare them for the PSAT. Like, from even the way the digital workbook is set up, my students and I went through a few PSAT practice questions last week, and you annotate the same way as you do in HMH. You also can keep track of your notes the same way you do in our digital workbook. So these are things that are kind of taken, for lack of better words, like the scaries out of testing, which it doesn't feel so, like, robotic per se, but it's just preparing them for those state assessments that are unavoidable. And I do appreciate, like, the language that's used. Again, it's a higher reach, but it does prepare them for what they're going to face, not just in state assessments, but in high school and higher education. And then lastly, when it comes to, like, the assessments, whether it's, like, formative or summative, it's a lot easier for me to keep track of the data that I'm getting, or even just the students' progress in, like, an everyday lesson, from, like, a rate your learning goal. That's, like, a digital aspect where they can quickly rate where they are, right? So it's like, I feel very confident. I'm kind of in the middle, and then I still need more practice. So I can, like, track that easier and adapt easier. And it's a much better just way for me to be able to assess that. And again, the summative assessment, like the end of unit assessment, is kind of structured just like the PSAT as far as, like, language, like words like analysis, inference, drawing conclusions. They're exposed to that early and throughout the entire curriculum. So it's not like, what does this mean when I sit down and I go to take this test? So in conclusion, no curriculum is perfect, but I think there's an opportunity to make the learning process, like, perfect for the kids that we serve. I think that'll happen with, like, time and practice. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Brooke and I got the joy of going around and asking a few students some of their feedback, because we feel like that's also very important. And so these are some of our boys that said, I used to struggle with vocabulary, but now that they have these check boxes and the vocabulary on the side, I know different words and meanings. Another one of our boys said, I like the way that the curriculum explains words to us and then uses the words in a story, and then I get tested later on to see what I learned. And then I like the stories because they are actually interesting, so I pay more attention and learn more. That's my personal favorite.
All right. And I went to another classroom, and that one little guy was saying it gives you The questions in the workbook, I cannot emphasize enough how much they love the workbook. And I think just as a mom, when the kids get home, they're on the computer right away. And so this is like, I don't know, my 17-year-old super into his cassette player right now. It's like a phenomena. Like it's almost like going back. It's like, I got this whole workbook. So they're very proud of their workbooks. And he goes, you don't have to get a new paper or packet for every story. They'd have to get a new packet. That's the one who would lose his packets. And the story and the questions are together. So you can go back to the story and answer your questions. They like that. It's really, easy for them to use, and the stories have a lot of action. He showed me a few. And the next one, I feel like I'm learning much more. It's getting through my head. I really like the highlighting we do because it helps me remember. When I read a question, I'm like, oh, I remember reading that part. So I just thought that was like they're teaching purposeful highlighting so they can actually go, it's not just highlighting. I don't know if you've ever highlighted with a first grader, but they just highlight everything. So now in sixth grade, they're highlighting with a purpose, and it's really effective, which is something, again, they'll utilize when they do M-STEP. And
We're now open for questions.
I guess I was very interested in Angela talking about hybrid, right? Because hybrid cars seem to be the perfect solution, right? We had to go all the way to one thing or another. And that's awesome to hear. So Gretchen, I identify with your age group. We're very similar ages. And at work, the young people challenge me all the time with their digital knowledge. And if I don't keep up with them in their digital knowledge, they kick me out of the group very quickly. So all I would say is I like hearing about the physical book, but I do think we have to push ourselves to be more digital. I like how I like people's preferences, but I just keep that in mind that I think we constantly have to push ourselves, unfortunately. If we don't, they're going to obsolete us pretty quickly. Good. No, I'm sorry. I wasn't. I was looking ready. I apologize. I wasn't. Sorry.
And she had surgery back in December, and so she was out of school for an extended time. And so for her, it was very nice to be at home and have the physical book where she could go back and read the stories and wasn't having to go on the computer and do a lot. But then at the same time, it was nice for her to get on the computer and be able to submit the assignment digitally, so she had both things in front of her. So I appreciate that.
Like I said, I think the hybrid model, the hybrid is the best.
I don't know anyone that's not using a hybrid. And like everyone's hybrid at Cantrick.
Angela, keep teaching everybody and make sure that they do so.
Well, I can't praise this department enough in the way that they work together. Like, this is 2 of the 6 of them, plus their special ed teachers. So where Gretchen might have more experience with some of the content or the things that kids have struggled with, she can feed Ange with that. And then Ange is just as active a participating member to the group and the way things happen in the department. Like,
Yeah, we do.
I can't speak enough about our
Very well.
And we've had the support of our rep, Dave Natalia, who is on call for us whenever we need her via email, text, phone, or in person. And she's come and she's pushed all of us at each meeting with her to learn more about the platform and how to navigate it and use it with the students. It's been a really positive experience.
The support from HMH has been really great. Natalia she's also the K-5. She was with us for that. Just anytime we need something, I can text her and she's immediately back to us. Or like Jen said, she's pretty local, so she'll be like, I'll come to you guys. And she comes. She'll sit down with us and help us to understand.
It's very awesome to see people. See people excited about it. That tells me some good stuff's happening. So I'm done. I'll shut up.
So
I guess we're going around the room. So I don't have any questions. I already asked my questions. But what's interesting is I had the luxury of sitting in some classrooms. A board member, Brian, put it out there and said, invite us in to see, and some teachers did. And it was so beneficial. And what I did look at was their ELA through HMH. One of the teachers was in first grade and one was in fourth grade with the two main, and exactly what you're saying was exactly what I saw. I was in there for a few hours. The excitement with the workbooks, you could tell the kids liked their books. They had more than one book, so I don't know what that means, but they had a couple different books that they were working on. And they used the overhead. One of you mentioned using the overhead to be able to put the book under, to be able, they did the highlighting. So it's interesting to hear what you say, that I just recently got to sit and see that play out in a classroom and ask the kids what they thought about it and the teachers what they thought about it, and they raved about it. So
Mary, questions or comments?
No, I just think that many of you mentioned that like metacognition, that reflection on your thinking, that reflection on your understanding is so incredibly important to the learning process for learners of all ages. And I know that I'm preaching to the choir as I look out and I see all these teachers and coaches in front of me. But it's also really important for the development of self-efficacy, right? And self-efficacy is the belief of I can do this, I can't do this. So metacognition is connected to self-efficacy, and so having these texts that are just slightly out of reach, but in a context that's a safe learning environment where you do have the scaffolding of like explaining what that grammar means and talking about character development and how to make inferences and how to use context clues to figure out what that word means the next time. That's the kind of learning environment where kids start developing like, oh, I can do this. Oh, it might be a little scary. I might not know, but I'm going to give it a try anyway. That's how we really make courageous learners. And that's what we need to really start seeing these scores like skyrocket. So thank you for sharing.
Gary?
Yeah, I'm going to segue off of what Darla said. I had the opportunity to sit in some classes too, and I hope that you teachers invite us back. I really enjoyed it, and I got quite an education. My comment is,
I learned vocabulary. I don't know about you, but I did.
Flight of Icarus, I was shocked to hear that.
Yep.
Made me feel good, and I guess a couple of the comments. One was, we're going to paraphrase, it was about striving for excellence now instead of striving for mediocrity. You know, and I got to be honest with all you guys that talked. Since I've been on the board, this has been the most encouraging night that I've had sitting at this chair academically, looking forward academically, that I think this is going to be okay, and I think we're going to make this work. And I know I talked to Andrea last year when she promoted this, and I wish you all luck. If there's anything I can do to help you, I promise I will. And like I said, please invite the board members back. We really were shocked and surprised when people invited us to their classroom, and we enjoyed it, and we got quite an education. Andrea, great job.
Thank
You deserve a real pat on the back.
Thanks. Well, these guys deserve. They do. Thank you.
I like that there could be a natural flow from the K-5 through to 6 through 8. Any input from the K-5 teachers that are?
I know we don't have any here with us tonight, but the K-5 teachers are really enjoying the program as well, and they're echoing a lot of the sentiments that you heard. Yeah, they're seeing that kids are. It was a big shift. It's a shift in the instruction and in the way that it looks within the classroom. So at first it took a little bit of getting used to and falling into a routine. But at this point, teachers are feeling pretty confident moving forward, and they're bringing the student work, and they're saying, okay, we might not have, maybe this person didn't write 5 pages, but what they did write is really quality writing. And they're seeing the grammar, they're hearing kids go down and I know Ashley's got a couple little ones at home, and they're talking about nouns and verbs, and they're putting sounds together, and they're blending those sounds. And so we're seeing those skills being developed at a younger age, and kids are excited about it. So
we got an email from a 5th grade teacher today who was like, I just discovered this new part, and this is so awesome, and my kids are loving it. And I walked into a room at the end of the day, and like she's preparing. She has her planning at the end of the day, so she's preparing for tomorrow. And like on the board was like, today we get to explore Waggle again, you know. And
I probably shouldn't say this because she can be a hard sell, but that would be my sister. So if she's watching, sorry.
I wasn't gonna say she was one of our hesitant to adapters at the beginning, and now she's emailing us going, this is happening, and then her students are filing in to get their stuff for the end of the day, like, we get to do Waggle tomorrow. Like there's a lot of excitement even in the younger grades. And yeah, so Andrea said, I have some youngins at home that are like, well, that word is a verb, and you can't have a sentence without a noun, and they're like having these conversations at home.
Tear up again.
Yeah, I know. And like my 2nd grader, she started the school year, she didn't know her letter names or her sounds. And she would just like write letters, random lines, and thought she was writing these elaborate stories back in September. And I was just recently going through some of her work, kind of filing it away. And she's like, what is that? And I was like, oh, this is a story you wrote for me back in October. And she's like, that's not a story. And I was like, well, you thought it was. And she goes, I write real sentences now. And we were able to compare the two. And she was writing, you know, with her CVC words, but she was able to write this little story about her picture and then could read it to me, right? And that's just in what, we've been in school for 6 months or so. And she's a second grader who had never been exposed to school before that. So, you know, like good things are happening to answer your question.
Yeah.
One thing I'm encouraged is the enthusiasm over the grammar part of it. Because the one thing I see in some of the younger kids is a real lack of understanding or use of grammar. Maybe it's from the texting and all the quick computer dialogue back and forth. But that's encouraging to hear that it's really, you're enthusiastic about that part of it. Andrea, kind of working on your story about your daughter, are we going to use this for the virtual students as well?
We have not looked at it as part of the virtual platform. It could possibly become part of conversations, but that would be something I'd need Terry and I would have
was
to
thinking if they have seat
talk
time
about.
where
But
they can kind of use the books as well as doing
yeah,
the virtual.
it's a possibility that we could look into.
Yeah, I think that'd be worthwhile. Any other questions? If not,
Just to close out, our recommendation then, as you know, in a couple weeks, this is going to come before you. We're recommending that we adopt HMH into literature as our tier 1 core ELA curriculum for grades 6-8 with the beginning of the implementation of that next school year, 26-27. So thank you.
thank you very much.
Yes.
All right. Great job, everybody. Thank you so much for
very good.
coming. Well done. All right. So next on the agenda, we're going to talk budget. In your board briefs, you had received an update on the severance plan and the activity inside of that. We have 17. We had another person come into it this morning. So the tally is 2 administrators, 7 secondary staff members, and 8 elementary staff members. That equates out to, if we didn't replace a single one, $1.8 million. Now, some will get replaced. I can't say here today and tell you how many or what positions, because we have to go through, and that's why we'd ask for this work to be able to start now, is that now that the all but one, I believe, the rescission window is now up. One today has just begun. So from there now, we get to start working through what positions need to be replaced, and such a variance of a position too that that's why I say I can't say or tell you which ones. But that was wonderful to see. I still think that out of that 17,
Just go back for 1 second. This, what we got is not the updated version that you just went through real quick, is it?
no, because
Yeah.
there's 2 more come on here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we printed that, we had the
Yeah, I
15th.
get you.
Yeah.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
looked at
Yep.
the paper.
Yep. So yes, when that went out, it was the 15. It's gone to 17.
That was the threshold, right, was 17?
Yep. Yep. And so, when it's all said and done, I think we might sit right around 21. Because I know you hear people talking out there, so we'll see what happens. So that, for our first step, that's doing what we looked at having it do, is give us those options. And so more to come on that for you. The other is this Friday, we begin the one-on-one meetings with our different groups to look at the goals that were set out there. For example, when we talked about operations, the operation department need to reduce costs by $250,000 to $350,000. So on Friday, we sit down with Dave and we talk about the plan and how that will happen. And it can either be reduction of costs or revenue. We'll take it either direction. It both works for us there. But tonight, the bigger conversation was with conversation around Orchard and really answering any questions for you on Orchard. We've had a chance since our last board meeting to have a lot of conversations around what should happen with Orchard. Should it stay put right there? Should we make this adjustment? And one of the things that we went back to was over the last few years, it's been asked of us how to make sure we get our kids at Orchard opportunities for CT, make sure our kids have opportunities for dual enrollment, all those extras, all those other things, right? Which is exactly what every child should have. And so as we started to really talk this out, we're now in a position, and this is just myself, okay? I know, and others will share different points on this, but where Monroe Public Schools is entering that day and age where one high school is what Monroe Public Schools should have. Monroe High School, as just having one high school, all of the resources, all of the pathways, all the opportunities for students to have a successful life after high school sits there. The exposures, and I think that's the biggest difference there is we want to, is with our facility and having everything at Orchard, we work on exposure. I know our staff works hard on different pathways for kids, but the simple idea at Monroe High School, the exposure to so many, and I'm saying exposure, positive exposure, okay? From the CTE realm to the dual enrollment to whatever pathway a child may want, it can be developed. And so it's opening our kids' eyes up to a bigger picture of what is available. And so when we think about what is at the heart of it, what's best for students is, and we're just, we're in that day and age where our resources and everything has shifted, but also our student body count. I've asked that question before of people, of how many students did you, if you went to Monroe Public Schools, how many students did you graduate with? And Steve, we're gonna have 320 graduates this year? Yeah. When you graduated, Steve, how many were in your class?
425. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mid to high 40s.
I got you beat 650.
Yeah.
625.
Yeah. So, yeah. So my point is that they have it. They have it. But my point to that is we've become smaller. All right. But we've also become very nimble. And so that's when we look at a recommendation, that's why we're making the recommendation. It's really about those opportunities. When asked, like, what would other options be if the board chose to not move Orchard? Our other options will be is that Orchard, we could look at go back to our model that we had looked at before, which is more of a virtual with ELA and math teachers there. And so again, and it's sad, I'm sorry this is just this way, but when 80% of your cost is staff, you have to make your reductions. And so you would change the delivery.
Clarify what I heard.
Yeah.
Orchard students would be moved to virtual.
I'm just saying, what are some options if Orchard stayed put, okay, we continue building, students are there, we would look at either changing some of the delivery model and for that. Because you're gonna have to do something. Okay, and so we're back to what is the best setup for our students to be successful and options. And so, or we reduce, and there's other ways we would have to reduce at that facility too. Or you leave it alone, then we're at another spot where, well, that's going to impact other areas. So it's not, when we put that on the table, and and Brian, I think about the question you asked at our last board meeting. The conversation around, and your question was about if we weren't in a budgetary crunch, would we be having this conversation around Orchard? I've had a conversation with some different people over the last couple of years around at some point in time, will Orchard still be there? So it's always been, it lingers there. And I go back to, that's why we said right out of the start was that what is the best opportunities for students after they graduate? And so that's why when we came through, thought about this. David, I saw you moving up to the mic. I know you've got a thought there.
Sure. I just think that it, again, like from a personal perspective, I think it comes down to resources, efficiencies, and we know that our team at Orchard do a fantastic job meeting the needs of their students. But in the situation that our district is in with the deficit, consolidating that and being more efficient with the resources that we have, and providing students with the more opportunities to prepare them from life. That is what we think that the high school can do. At the same time, while we are potentially asking for a consolidation and moving the students from virtual and the students from Orchard to the high school, we're still well aware that some of the programming, the alternative programming for some of these students, there might need to be something in the middle between Trojan Academy and virtual and traditional students. Like we are well aware that we might need to make some adjustments to provide some sort of blended option for students at Monroe High. And to what Andy was saying about if things don't change, we are going to need to look at how Orchard is staffed and the staffing design of Orchard, and make efficiencies accordingly. And James has been influential in some of those ideas. So we have a plan, but I just wanted to echo what Andy is saying, that I believe that our district could be more efficient with that consolidation at Monroe High School and still provide the same amount, or if not, I guess, more opportunities for students with the same care, compassion that the Orchard team brings them this year.
And the last part on that, and then I just really want to open this up, is, and Steve has heard me say this before, okay? 2 years ago, Monroe High School would not have been able to do this. We were not there. There's been a lot of work that's gone on at Monroe High School, and by making that happen, I really think, I think in terms of people that have been in this community their whole life, okay? And I think in terms of the stories I hear, and there's these myths out there. I've heard myths about Orchard. They've been dispelled. But I also hear myths about high school. I hear myths of like, oh my gosh, if they go to the high school, they're going to be eaten alive, and we can't let our babies go there. We can't do this. We can't do that. And a lot of it goes back to it's a lot of myths, and we've put away and dispelled a lot of myths out there. And so, as I echoed from our last board meeting, this is the result of those two gentlemen sitting right there and doing their jobs, that we can have this kind of a conversation. If we had one or either of them not done their jobs, we're not even having this conversation. And status quo. And status quo, as you all know, our results would not be getting better. And so that's why we can actually even have this conversation. So I wanted to just open it up, and that's what this portion right here is about for our board members. You have people sitting out here you can obviously call on, or we'll gladly answer any question that you have.
So one of the things that when we were hearing about potentially moving Orchard to Monroe High School, one of the things that I was hearing is that Trojan Academy would kind of absorb Orchard, and we would afford the flexibility that Orchard provides students through programming that is typically done through Trojan Academy. So something that, this is my personal stance on this right now, and please chime in if you see otherwise. The thing that makes Orchard special, as somebody that taught there for a few years, is the staff, it's the class flexibility, and it's the small school building experience and a tight-knit support network. So it's that small staff that is that tight-knit support network, right? So taking Orchard and saying like, sure, we can give them that experience through Trojan Academy. Trojan Academy is not synonymous with what Orchard does. So if we're going to be pursuing this as an option, what I would recommend is we try to stay true to what Orchard does in every way, shape, and form that we currently do. Not absorb it into Trojan Academy, not follow a Trojan Academy model. We keep our staff, we try to emulate a small building within Monroe High School. We try to keep that staff, the Orchard staff, and provide staffing for our Orchard students so that they have that tight-knit network of staff that they repeatedly see throughout their day, that they have those touch points throughout their day, and then also afford them the flexibility that we give them throughout their day, their week, their semester. So if we have to go this route of drastic change, I want to uphold the pillars of what Orchard is as much as we can, instead of losing a lot of what Orchard does because, well, that's how we can fit it into high school.
Steve or James, do you want to make comment on that?
Yeah. So David and I probably, beginning of last year, even maybe even when we first came on a job, but the beginning of last year when we started talking about possible budgetary cuts and ramifications, and we had loose conversations about possibilities because it's our job, right? We can't predict the future, but we have to prepare as much as possible for it. So we've been gaming out different possibilities, kind of unofficially last year, a little more officially this year. So what we've done is come up with loose plans for different scenarios. And so depending on what the board decided with the budget and what the budget would be and things like that. So I think each one of the questions, each one of the comments has a trigger. So when something happens, something happens. Like right now, change, right? I don't like change. I've said that before. None of us like change. But it's part of what we do in education. Every year we change. I heard the program earlier with the middle school. I got pretty dang excited. I've been 23 years. I was Gretchen Elliott. And when I heard her tearing up a little bit, I've worked with you before, Carrie, in that capacity. And Calkins was Calkins. When I'm asked to do a job, I'll do it. It wasn't easy. But the balance that I heard, but to get back to what we're really talking about is the idea of they're embracing the opportunity to make an adjustment. So with what Mary, I worked with Mary for a year. I loved it. She was my music teacher, and we got to know each other really well, and I really respect her. And I think that what she just said captures a lot of what the staff thinks, and probably if the students were to talk, they would say something similar because they're nervous about it naturally. They haven't had any kind of uprising or any kind of like official protests or anything like that. But they've been making comments to each other. They've been making comments to teachers, to staff, to myself, and they're nervous and they make comments that are sometimes very logical and sometimes very emotional. And it's our job to help them with that transition. So I want you all to be confident, no matter what you pick as the option, there will be an appropriate response as far as staff goes. And Steve and I have always worked well together. David and I worked well together. We've had great support from Andy and from the board. And I think that as much as possible, I think that honoring that would be the best thing. Now, finances have a say in things. Boards have a say in things. The future has a say in things because we don't know what next year looks like. As far as financing. And I know I'm not being super specific here, but that's with intent because I don't want to commit to something or say something right now that would be binding later and it would put us in a precarious situation as far as promises that can't be made or kept. So I know that Mary's asking me, Tom's asking me a specific question, and I'm trying to answer it the best I can without being too critical. Well, Steve and I were talking about that. We were kind of giggling about it back there. I think we got some of their attention. We're watching.
No
The problem at the end is they changed their mind, which was appropriate. So,
Thanks, James. So, yeah, as Andy said, I couldn't stand here 2 or 3 years ago and say that we could confidently provide a pathway for students that was not a non-traditional pathway. Our staff worked very hard because we were seeing students drop out of school. And we did not want that to occur anymore. So we were given some flexibility to create Trojan Academy, to create a situation where students feel successful at Monroe High School. It is a very big school. It's a very big school. But once you get inside it, at least for the last 6 years, I know I've been working really hard to make it a home away from home for all of our students. And there was a group or a segment of our school, of our students, that weren't succeeding in a traditional pathway. So we created Trojan Academy, founded on trauma-informed learning, and we created a small community atmosphere. And we picked, our first year, we picked the most struggling 15 students, sophomores, juniors, and a few seniors. And these students had no business of graduating, and they ended up graduating. Second year, we grew to 30. And we created an environment for our students where they felt good about themselves, they felt successful, they took one class at a time, they could focus on what they needed to do. They did not have to move around the building. They could stay organized. And we created, as many of you have seen, beautiful classroom atmospheres within our school where students felt a sense of home and a sense of pride. And whatever the board is, whatever the decision is, I just know that we have created our school so that anyone walking through our doors, we feel very confident that they can be successful. And the very first time I did come up here to talk about this is not an easy thing to talk about. And I talked about the closing of all of our elementary schools several years ago, and sitting in the Monroe High School and the Monroe Middle School auditorium, watching our community divide because we were trying to pick one building over another. And that's not what I want this to be. I respect James very much. I respect all of you. I respect our Orchard staff and our Orchard students. But I was raised as a Monroe Public School student. And my father taught here at Monroe Public Schools. And that's what I'm here to represent, all students in this community. And whether they go to Orchard, whether they go to virtual or Monroe High School, they are welcome in our school. And I'm very confident to tell everyone that we have something for everyone at our school and a great pathway for their success. So,
Yep. Steve, just an example, I think I have a lot of confidence in the way you've been running the high school, particularly Trojan Academy, which I had some questions about earlier, but recently, last year, we had to, due to a discipline issue, we had to put a young lady into Trojan Academy. And just a couple weeks ago at the Community Foundation event, she was one of the interns.
yeah.
I think a fantastic turnaround, and I think that's due to Trojan Academy, to be honest.
I could sit here and tell you tons of success stories, and just things that will make you cry. I mean, like the kid that we founded this on, we based this on this one student. He had maybe 2 or 3 credits as a sophomore going into, maybe not even that, going into Trojan Academy. And last year, on the last day, I was able to give him a big bear hug because he did it. And yeah, I mean, we were pushing him across the stage, kicking and screaming, but we worked with his mom and he was able to do it. And like I said, we have been able to create something pretty special at our school. And if it is the decision that things are consolidated, we would be ready for that.
So Tom, to your point, I think it's a extremely valid point, and this is why it's so hard. That same story has been done with him and the people sitting out there, and that's what makes it hard. Is both facilities have those stories and what they do, and so that's why I think this is an extremely hard conversation too.
And as you know, Andy, when I first got on the board, one of my big focus was how do we get the Orchard students involved in CTE?
Yep.
And even beyond CTE, the clubs, whether it's choir, whether it's band, maybe more so in athletics as well.
Yep.
Anything we can do in that respect, we should try and do.
And I don't want to, I want to add something to what you said, Mary, because I think it was important. The 80 to 100 Orchard students that are on Orchard books right now, I think a lot of it depends on what they want and when they're presented options. And I do think that there's a third option that Andy alluded to that the three of us have talked out in detail that I don't want to go into detail here, but it may be something that looks a little different, where it's some sort of hybrid, where it's the in-person for some, the traditional learning for some, in that small environment and low numbers, while other classes are delivered online, and then it allows for opportunity potentially for CTE, choir, band, orchestra, those types of things. I don't want to say that, like, looking at the dominoes that need to fall, we do need to know what the board's decision is, but I think that's something that, James has even talked about looking at whichever way the board goes. We've got to meet those students' needs, whether it's at Orchard or the high school, and it may be through some sort of design that we've got on paper, and we need to execute it to meet their needs. So
I think this is, Mary, you captured really well what you said about the pillars of Orchard. I think this is collectively probably the most difficult decision that I've yet to make on the board. And because I feel like we're having a conversation, and we just entered into this conversation where we were saying we weren't promising all things to all people, but we kind of are promising all things to all people. But to get to the efficiencies of saving money, you have to cut something here. I mean, if we could do exactly what Mary said, I don't see how we would save $650,000, $850,000, because we wouldn't be getting rid of any staff, frankly. And that's my struggle, is how do you get to the 650 or 850? That number I still look at, and I'm not sure I understand clearly. And I think that I'm going to have a better understanding of savings to do that, because frankly, that number is fairly low, especially if it's at the low end, to make such a drastic change. I don't think that the idea is necessarily wrong. I don't know if this is the right time. I think we should have a larger conversation about declining enrollment. I think that's going to factor into a lot more decisions besides just Orchard. This enrollment question isn't going to get better. There's nobody saying Monroe's demographics are going to get better in the next 10 years. Nobody. So I think the challenge would be, so are we picking Orchard to start with, or have we looked at everything else to make sure that if we're talking about utilization, if we're talking about efficiencies, I heard both of those words, is this just the lowest hanging fruit to pick, or is it something different? Am I seeing it the wrong way?
Nope, you make sense.
That was exactly my question is, moving those students to the high school is going to be a big change for a good number of them. And the savings that we're talking about, the 600,000 or whatever, where is that savings? Like, what are we saving on when we do that? And if it's not staff, because we're already saying we're not going to cut staff, we're not going to, we don't want to lose staff. But we've talked about duplication of services. So how does that not include staff as well? So that's my question: is the 600,000 worth this big change?
Yeah. So when you look at that number, it is going to be staff. Because what you have is you have a blending of staff. You have staff that would be coming in from Orchard that are blending into the high school. So you have social emotional supports that are already at the Monroe High School. And so we haven't talked at all about, trying to, there's been no example like conversation around layoffs, but we do have people that are leaving the system. And we've said that repeatedly, that people leave our system throughout the whole year. But that's what you'd have these people would just be taking over other jobs. And so, for example, if it's a coaches to all the other sports that are at Orchard, they'd be absorbed into the Monroe High School. So it's really if people already left and that reduction there. to your point, which you're talking about, like the smaller area, the classes. So even on that one, like you could still have, yes, that math, science, or social studies, ELA courses, and so you still have an instructor there. He already knows his role, for example, changes. Okay, as the principal of Orchard, he knows that that's a shift for him. And so that's when we start to look at what is embedded into those numbers. What we try to be very cautious of is not going. If James didn't know that, I would not have been standing right here or sitting right here and saying that. But he knew this, and so what we're trying to be very cautious of is like, so what does it mean? So of the $650,000 or $850,000, does that mean that these 8 people are not employed at Monroe Public Schools? Can't say that because of people that leave. Like we learned something today that we have another employee at Monroe High School that's probably not going to be with us next year. Well, that opportunity then could open a door for another person that could be at a different facility, that place that we have, and it's not part of the severance package. So we have people that tell us, oh yeah, I'm not coming back, and it's not just teachers that tell us that. So that's part of this work that we do right here. So okay.
Do we have, part of that 650 or 650 to 850 is going to be facilities reduction. Do we have a feel for how much we would save by mothballing Orchard?
So,
because there's obviously janitorial services, there's energy.
I have that number right here.
I mean, there's got to be a pretty definitive number on what we would save in mothballing.
When you say mothballing,
yeah,
what exactly are you referring to?
Well, I don't.
We didn't say we're going to sell it, right?
No, right.
No.
Mothballing means closing it.
Closing it, but putting it in a state of suspension, let's call it
Okay,
that.
that's okay.
Just
So
so
make sure you're clear.
Like Waterloo?
Well,
no, the heat's still on, but it's not at 71 degrees
Right.
like it is in here right now. It's more at around
72.
Yeah.
No, don't be messing with my temperature.
I'm sitting here
Don't
warm right
let,
now.
no. Get your
But-
fingers off the button.
To that point, yeah, no water usage,
Yeah.
electricity's all been,
Yeah,
so.
yeah,
Because that has to be a number, right?
yeah, you got to keep, you don't want pipes to freeze and all that, so you got to put it down in some kind of state of suspension.
So,
That you feel safe with too, right?
What's that?
That you feel safe with. The
Yeah,
building has to be
right.
safe.
And if we do need it again, we can start it back up.
You'll have that tomorrow.
so I was a listener here for a while, and I'm not always, but I value what everybody said. I understand Mary's point. I think there's a lot of valid points in there if you are looking at that direction of movement. I have one statement I want to make is I believe that the concerns of everybody involved, the parents, the students, and the staff, are all valid, and I believe that you all believe that too. But I also believe that concerns are not all myths. And I do believe that people's concerns can be valid. I know we talk about people's own experiences, and they have their own experiences, and they have those things that they need to consider what's going to impact them. And so we definitely don't want to discount that for which people feel. And I'm not usually one to talk about feelings, but I thought that was important to validate those people. The other thing was, so what I heard was the focus is for 600,000 to 800,000. When I thought about that, I'm like, we just spent like 700,000 on a reading program. We spent 500,000 on this. So we're not talking about earth-shattering numbers, but it contributes to the whole, and we understand that. But if we're not having conversations about layoff, and I believe I heard that said, and if it's all related to staffing and those kind of things, I'm like, they just aren't equating to me, to Carrie's point, to the value of disrupting so much that is offered, because one thing over the years I heard is Monroe offers a variety of things. So you offer, this, the 5-6 building was an inclusion into that. But the Orchard has always been an inclusion into that. You introduced Trojan Academy, that's an inclusion into that. Virtual has been with seat time, has been an inclusion into that. And now we go, okay, we've built all this out, and now we're going to disrupt it in a way that takes away something that I thought was always a value to the system. So when you talk about the other thing that I struggle with is I listen to everybody talk, and I hear about all these conversations that have been going on, all these conversations that I keep hearing someone say, well, we can't tell you that. Well, we really can't tell you this. We can't tell you that. We can't explain this. But we are the ones that are expected to make a decision on a very impactful thing that's going to impact the entire community. So I struggle with the fact that there's information that we aren't privy to because someone has deemed it's not for us to know, and I doesn't put a feel good if I go back to emotion.
Can I respond to that, please? We game plan for every decision the board makes or doesn't make constantly, because we know that you have the ultimate say in what happens. We have to talk about contingencies. What happens if, the next person what happens if HMH is voted down? Like, we talk about all of those things.
But it wasn't the contingency conversation that bothered me, and I don't want to say the word bother, but it's true. It was the conversations that led to where we got to right now on us making that decision. And, there have been many conversations, not just tonight, but prior to tonight, of all the planning that went into this. And you have to understand, this was all just put in front of us. We didn't have the months of planning and the conversations that you all had and all the discussions that are leading up to this moment and this vote, and so that's my 2 cents.
I guess, you put Orchard building transition as number 2 activity. So that was pretty high up the pecking order.
It sat there only so that it was in more of an order of just going through, and from when we think about like a decision making, it was there so that if the board makes that election, then we're making the plans for that transition. So that's why it was sitting there in the timeline. We could have put it at the bottom.
But we also don't know the cost of the incentive plan, because even though you had, we'll say 17 people choose it with a few more, some of those positions are going to be replaced. Yeah. And until we know how many positions are going to replace, that 1.8 million is not even a real number.
Right. So I guess what I was getting at, you put it at 2, and I thought this was put at 2 because we were looking at numerical value, except when you get to 8, which is, hey, this is when the rubber meets pavement, 8's where everything has to happen, right? So that's the way I was thinking of it. If I'm incorrect, then I'm incorrect. But could you wring out more than $250,000 out of the athletics department if you needed to, right? So and I'm a pro athletic person. I am pro athletic, okay? But if we're talking about Orchard building transition and athletics department adjustments, those two could flip.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. What's interesting is we start talking about all of the different parameters. For example, like you get into the world of athletics.
Mm-hmm.
One of the major costs in the world of athletics is travel.
Mm-hmm.
So there are schools that they drop off and go home. They don't travel on the weekends. We've been both ways all the time. And so that's obviously one of the areas that we're going to have we're looking at is what's the toleration level of this board, because every board is going to be different there as far as what they'll allow, and or even from a coaching side of it too. When we get into the athletics, so that's one, and that's why that's when we look at it, that's just a template right there. Or hopefully that when we start to move, some areas could be bigger too.
So I'm not sure what you just said in the end.
Yeah,
I'm more confused now.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you answered. I don't know what transportation. I was lost in your
So you're,
explanation.
so when we take, sports teams to events, that's where we spend a large amount of money is for away events.
So have you looked at the cost of that in this at all?
Yeah, that's part of. So what will happen is when you look, when they get into athletics, what will most likely be presented to you is that a coach will have the choice at the beginning of the season to, but again, this goes back to, I've had boards that said, you must keep all transportation to and from events, okay? We're gonna have a bus. If we could give our coaches the freedom, though, to say at the beginning of the season, do I need a bus for a given event? Some are going to say no. For example, this last year we had a swim meet on a Saturday in Dundee. Like, no problem. We'll see you there and you go forward. Other coaches will be, please drop us off and then our kids will get home. People always go into liability purposes on there. So that's the freedom how we can reduce athletic cost is in travel, but we have to allow for freedom to happen inside of that. And so there are some sports like, no, you're going to want to have a bus to and from. Others are going to be like, nope, I don't need a bus at all. So but what we have done, though, is we've always had buses to and from and stayed put there while that's all occurring.
Okay, so I'm still back to Orchard being number two, because the reason Orchard is number two is we're voting on it tomorrow. We're not talking about any of those other departments. We're voting on that tomorrow. So that had to be a critical part of the plan. So I understand why you presented why it's a critical part of the plan.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at, if we're looking at financial savings, I don't know that Orchard had to be two. If 4, 5, and 6 could pony up more money, I mean, that's a financial question.
So the only reason that, like I said, Orchard's on there as in that spot, in that timeline has to, is if the board made the election tomorrow night to consolidate Orchard, then they're all going through the planning laying it all out. When I say that, is like the whole planning and making that transition stuff all happen. So that's the why it's here, okay?
That's the first time I've heard you. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm sure that kids are talking, and you're probably talking to them and listening to them. Do you have any idea of how many students we could possibly lose by making this transition?
I don't have any specific information on that. Part of one of the ideas is if they were to transition out there, then we would sit with each student and we would very shortly have a pretty good number. If they don't change their mind or don't have any other outside influences on their decision, to create a plan for each kid. I don't have any specific numbers. I haven't tried to have any mass conversation with them with the intent of not inadvertently creating more problems than are necessary at this time. Just to be careful with their emotional value, because what they'll ask for is specifics. And what I won't be able to do is give them specifics.
Right.
And they will be frustrated by that, and they'll create their own idea of what the specifics will be. And it'll be probably a false narrative, which I would not want to inadvertently create.
And don't get me wrong, I trust the both of you. Great leaders. I know it's going to get done, whatever needs to be done. Just hate to see this be the reason.
And I appreciate the conversation.
So I'll help you with tomorrow night. It's there. You have the election of keeping it there. You have the election of voting it down. You have the election of moving it to another date. You have that election. It was there so that if there was going to be any kind of opportunity, that it was on the agenda. I didn't want it to be like brought in late, so that's why it just sits there, and you have that election as a board.
So kind of back to Brian's point of where we're at in the chronological way that this is set out. In order to have this all complete, we're on a very tight time crunch here. Like, it's not like we have 6 months to a year on our side to make these decisions. So this is tight and this is fast. Yeah. So if you suggest putting it out there further, what would be the benefit of putting it out there further?
I'm sharing to you that those are your options you have as board members.
Okay.
That's all.
So
that's all I was just saying.
So if that was an option that you're saying there is, what would that look like to the play out? Because again, we have decisions and I want to know, like, if I mix these two colors together, what color I'm going to end up with. Now, if I mix more of one than another, I might end up with a different mix. But at the same time, when I make a decision, I want to know what I'm deciding. I mean, and I just don't feel like we have gotten a full story on what we're deciding. I think there's pieces, but I think the rest of it we just don't have.
I won't want to speak to that second part, but the first part, as far as timeline goes, and this is the educational side for me, and I think that people will understand this. We begin with the end in mind. What's the outcome? And the outcome is September or August of the 2026 school year. So if we start backtracking that into what needs to happen as far as preparations, we have to have an idea because of contracts. Now, me personally, I can work forever. And I work in the summertime. I work whenever I'm needed to. But the people I need have a contract that goes to June 11th or 10th, right around there, or maybe a little bit longer. And those would be my staff. And so then we take that date and then we work back to now. And then there's the financial aspects of it. So then the other part of it is the number of positions that are available, the financing, those things. So it's a very complex problem that obviously I know that you guys they have the gravity for it, the understanding that it is a complex problem. For us, it's like a chess game based on if this happens, this happens, this happens. But we all know that the outcome is something will happen in the fall, one way or the other. And we have to be prepared for that. So that's kind of the timeline. And the timeline was initiated by the state of Michigan and finances and being able to, so it's not a right now concern that might feel like it. This has been something that's been in the works as far as at the state level for at least 2 years now. And unfortunately, there's always triggers along the way. And now we're like in a situation, well, if this happens based on next year, we have to do this, this, and this. We try to have enough time to do it, to be fair to the kids, to be fair to the staff, and to do the best things possible.
I look at it also, go ahead.
I was going to say, we have a hard deadline in May 11th for Cassie to put together the budget. So one way or another, we have things put in place.
Those are some of the very specific time periods. So Cassie has May 11th. If it bumps past that, obviously I'm not Cassie. I don't know all the ramifications of it and the legalities of it and all these things. But I know that for her, with that May 11th, if things can happen closer to now, she'll have more opportunities to make the best decisions, to have the most conversations, have the most input, to talk to people that with you guys or with the cabinet or with outside sources. So it's not that I'm trying to add to say, yes, you need to do it now. I'm just trying to give you the context from our perspective.
Right.
So the other thing I look at as I'm sitting here thinking and listening to you talk is, we have a, $73, $78 million budget for 1 year at Monroe Public Schools. And so we look at, okay, we have to make some adjustments. And all I can think of is out of 70, I'll say 73 to be conservative, $1 million, our option is to completely disrupt a school. And that's hard for me to grasp. It seriously is hard for me to grasp out of we'll say $73 million.
Well, unfortunately, any of these cuts that we make, whether it's the severance package, any of the other recommendations that come up from the other groups are going to be disruptive, no matter what we do. We talk about athletics. Any reductions there are going to be disruptive to the athletic teams, unfortunately.
Right. I think to my point is what we have been provided is only a snippet of the entire budget of options for which could be seen as other avenues that could be taken. So this was one suggestion of ideas out of a massive, big budget. And so just we have to be mindful of that.
You know, but again, recognize 80% of the general fund goes to salaries. So,
Well, right.
so, you know, when you, it's a $73 million budget, of which 80% is salaries.
I
And that's-
understand that.
Having this conversation now where it sounds like we'll try to be all things to all people, which is
Yeah.
we want to keep this very tight-knit
Yeah.
staff. You can't do that if you're talking about reductions.
Exactly.
So, I mean, and I don't think, if I read the room correctly, I don't think anybody's in favor of pushing this back, because we know the timelines that are involved. And I wouldn't want to do that to anybody. I mean, this is already, like I said, arguably the toughest decision we'll make, and we would just make it tougher by kicking the
Yeah,
can
you
or
can't
pushing
kick
it
the
down.
can, yeah.
So I don't think anybody's saying that. I'm just trying to get to a clear understanding that you're giving me a number, and that plus or minus, I mean, it's math, plus or minus something, it's going to be around that number. And I don't know how I get 650 or 850, because I don't have the mothballing number, which I would have thought we'd already have that by now. You're asking to make a decision tomorrow, and we're still searching for the mothballing number. That should be done.
Again, we can always, you know, we can't delay it past May 11th, but we can delay it till the next meeting in April if we want more information.
Well, I said, this has been on here for a
Yeah,
bit.
I agree.
So we should have enough information to make a decision tomorrow.
Right, because we should know if what you're saying, Andy, is it's staffing, primarily staffing from Orchard that's going to make that, you should have a number of how many staff, because, you know, how many staff equal that number. I mean, you came up with this number somehow, and if it's all staffing, you should say, well, Darla, there's 36 staff members down there, and it's going to be 20 of whatnot in order to come up with this number. We don't know how you came up with that number.
Gotcha. So the best way I can describe that is, and this is where we're trying to be very careful because of, it's going to be staff, but as we've said before, is how many staff will actually be reduced because of other staff having already left or leaving the system. And so when we look at that, that's why there's that range. It's staff. Okay, that's the best way I can say it. So, lack of a better way of saying it, got an administrator, he'll be doing something different. Okay. We got the secretary, we got everybody there. And so you start to think about, okay, well, whom is still here? There is going to be a point where, yes, when it's all said and done, there are going to be some staff members that we will be communicating to that will not be at Monroe Public Schools next year.
So I think that that's important. If we're talking about staffing with this, we're talking about staffing with the incentives, we're talking about teacher staffing, we're talking about other suggested staffing. You know, there does become a point where we have to know which positions they are in order for us to make decisions that we as a board want to support. Because we have to support those things that you're putting forward, and if we don't have the information, then
Okay.
I guess I think, Andy, you can make some assumptions on staffing and come up with a model of what that means financially.
Yes.
Now, that
We
may
can-
change as we go down the road, but to help us make a decision if we base that on a certain set of assumptions.
And that's exactly it. We're just trying to be very cautious. We don't want people.
so.
Would a
what
2-week
is-
delay help this?
Well,
Until we get the mothball numbers?
There's been
and
plenty of
staff?
time for this. There has been plenty
I
of
just
time.
segueing off what, Brown was saying about what's
Oh.
the mothball number?
I think that number should have already been done, and I'm pretty confident that they can get pretty close to that number. Dave's over here betting me something, but I'm not going to say anything.
So maybe it would be helpful to know what your budget at Orchard is, because I'm going to tell you, I don't know. So what is your annual budget down there that you all operate off of?
I don't have the specific number in front of me, but
I don't have it right in front of me, but Mr. Drew only has a small portion that he's responsible for as the building administrator. He has a small building budget for his supplies and things. The
Okay.
staffing is a district level number. I don't have my spreadsheet open. If you give me a couple minutes, I can probably pull up from the February budget amendment how much was allocated at the district level to Orchard.
Okay.
I just need a couple minutes.
That would be a 1 month?
That would be in the fiscal year.
Okay.
And that would be the facility budget?
Facilities is harder because the costs for custodians are just charged to the district. They're
Okay.
not
You're talking
charged.
staffing?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
I could give you the budget for the teachers and the district level initiatives at Orchard, which would not include the maintenance and custodial because that is a district level responsibility. So I don't know if that number will really give you what you're looking for.
How about the energy costs?
We do have utilities broken out by building.
Okay.
Yeah, but if it's still going to stay open, then we don't.
But you're gonna turn the thermostat.
But it could at least give you a ballpark of what
Yeah,
it's
I
currently
appreciate
budgeted
it.
at, if you
Yeah.
just give me
Yeah.
a couple minutes.
Just one comment, if anybody's been watching the news lately, just a comment on this whole budget discussion is that we are not alone in this situation. Ann Arbor Schools has a $25.5 million budget shortfall that they have to address this year. And I think, Andy, that's the second shortfall they've had in the last 5 years?
Yes.
So while this is tough on us, other schools certainly have a much more difficult situation. Doesn't make our situation easier. No.
But there's, yeah.
The interesting thing is their enrollment has not dropped. So they're dealing with this with the same enrollment.
Well, and our staffing went like this, our enrollment dropped and our staffing increased.
Yeah.
We got those numbers recently.
Right.
There you go.
Okay, any more questions or comments?
Well, we're going to wait for her to get the
Well,
information.
I have one that I would just like to fling out there. It's way out in left field. We haven't discussed it before. It's not on a Gantt chart. Put on your seatbelts. So, and please understand, I do not say this lightly, especially as a musician. So we as a board approved $100,000 spending for instrumental and choral music. We also got rid of pay to play. What if we suspended for a single academic year those two programs? Because that's $200,000, which is a third of what we're talking about for the cost of Orchard. A single academic year. Reinstated, we could even write it into the memorandum of reinstating 27, 28. Because if we're in financial straits, I'm trying to think of opportunities that we can seize that would not impact our academic programming as adversely as other things that are currently on the table, like increasing class size, like having split level classes, like other things like that. Told you it was way out in left field. I just wanted to, light discussion.
I would agree with what you're saying. If athletic budget has to be cut by 250,000, like we're just talking about handling half of that really with pay to play back. So that's an option.
Maybe not total cut, but maybe a reduction.
Right.
Reduction sometime for a year.
So I appreciate the thinking out of the box ideas. I'm looking at the decisions that we're making, and I brought this up at one other meeting, and obviously I sit on the Board of Education, so my number one priority is to ensure the success of the district and everything I do, whether anybody agrees with the decision I make or not. But the other thing I have a responsibility for is those people that elect us and put us here. And those people are being impacted by a lot of economic distress. We keep hearing about the demographics of Monroe and how challenging it is. And the last thing I think we need to look at is how are we piling on? So I don't know, Mary, if that's something that we feel we have to do. Obviously, that may be the case. I'm not suggesting that, but, you know, the community, we just have to consider what this is doing to them as well. That's my.
I think both of those initiatives were, in both cases, universally, widely liked. So I think we were, and I appreciate you saying we're only going to cap it for a year, but I think we're sending a very dangerous message that if we're willing to do it for 1 year, then we certainly might be willing to do it for 2 years. And since we just did this, I feel like that would be, and I'm not saying that we might not come to that. I just don't think that's one of the things that I'd be willing to throw out in the pile right now. I think the question at hand is, how do we feel about Orchard? And that's a question that we'll all have to ruminate over and make a decision by tomorrow night. And all of this, that's going to be some soul searching, I'm sure. Mary, I know you taught there, so that's, I mean, that's an extra added layer I don't have to think about. But nonetheless, I think it's something that we really have to mull over. And I think the more we talk about other ideas at this moment, probably don't help this discussion further. I think we have a discussion, we have a decision we have to make.
We have to make a decision
Right.
on that.
Yes. I don't think
then
100,000 here or 100,000 there
Yeah.
will make that any better, because I don't have faith on the 650, 850 number, so. I appreciate it.
If I may.
I appreciate
You
it.
got some information?
Yep. Our district level budget of things coded to Orchard is $1,120,000, almost $121,000 overall. That includes water, gas, and electricity, a budget amount of $28,500 for the fiscal year.
Thank you for that number.
Thank you, Cassie.
28.5.
What was it again?
28,500 is what I have
28.5,
budgeted.
okay.
And if you mothball them, assuming, once again, you're going to have to provide some sort of safety, security type detail at the building.
I'm assuming there would have
Because
to
Tom
be
said mothball.
some sort of.
You're going to have to pay
assistance
for that
there.
service too.
If we move,
You were allowed to with the state.
what do you mean? What?
I didn't think the state allowed you to put buildings on hold. Didn't that what happened with the conversation with Waterloo? That there was,
For a year?
Yeah.
I know we paused it for a year, isn't there?
If the,
Let's use
If
the
I
word
may.
pause then. Sorry, mothball was something Tom said and I was, let's say, we can say pause, that's fine. Pause may be better.
To understand the
That flip
concept.
is that
Tonight's
you're
the
on
first
another
night we
use of
heard
that
of
facility.
it. I'm just trying to understand the concept, that's all.
if I may, there's just certain statuses that we can choose from in the education entity master for buildings. You are permitted to indicate that you're closing a building if you're under construction for renovation is what we use for Waterloo. There's several other options that you can change the category, which changes how the state views that entity code. And each building has a separate code and classification based on what's going on in that particular building. So it's not that you can't, we can't make that change on our own. We have to make a request of the state to make that change in EEM.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Heck, just updating you, you requested the custodial maintenance.
Yeah.
Depending on what we use it for next year, if we just left it alone, you're looking at probably 75 to 100,000 if we took away the nightly cleaning and the daily support. And then any kind of maintenance support of ongoing, if we reduce that just to like we did during the Waterloo pause.
Yeah.
But depending on what it's used for next year, that number would fluctuate.
And again, what was the number you said?
75 to 100,000, 50 to 100,000. I mean, it just depends on what it was used for next year. But just removing the daily and evening cleaning due to students being in the building would be a straight 75,000. And then you would also have additional maintenance to that as well. So that's where we came up with that $100,000 number.
Okay.
But for our decision tomorrow, none of that is really a factor in it, right? Because we're not talking about doing that, are we? I mean, is the,
It is a part of what potentially you would save if you weren't doing daily.
For a year.
Maintenance. For a year.
you'd either have to do it forever in order to benefit until long term.
Right, but I think what we're talking is if we move Orchard to the high school, that's
Oh.
probably the end of us using the Orchard building.
Okay, Okay.
Until we-
Not necessarily.
I'm catching up now.
I mean, there's people, there's.
Till we find another use
Until there's
for it. Yeah.
another possible use.
Or-
Another possible use?
Or somebody else.
I haven't had conversations with anybody to see what is out there. I've had people
Yeah.
tell me, just say to me, please don't sell it. That's all. So.
And if I'm permitted to add just one
Yeah,
more thing.
sure.
The May 11th is a hard time, like that's a firm deadline for me to be able to reflect all the changes for you guys to adopt a budget at the end of June. So the sooner some of those bigger decisions, which this is obviously, while it may not be the highest dollar amount on the potential changes, it is a bigger change that has a domino effect in other areas. And in order for us to get some firmer information on other changes, this is one of those pieces that kind of affects
Yeah.
lots of other things. And the more time we have to figure out specifics
Yeah.
will help me get you an accurate and balanced budget for next year.
Yeah, obviously, if this doesn't save the 650 that we're estimating, then the other groups have to come and pony up more.
Right.
That's why I thought it was clear number 2 on the Gantt chart.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, obviously, we may have we'll have a decision to make tomorrow night, so.
There's more discussion.
And more discussion, obviously. Okay, then the next on the agenda is public commentary. I think we do have some tonight.
We sure do. We have a new clock, but I am fearful of using the new clock. Exactly know what's gonna happen. So Dave, Kane, and I are gonna have to do more work. I think I can get it to work, but Aaron tries to charm. I'm not doing it. It's maybe not working enough fun. So it's gonna be 3 minutes as it normally is. I will tell you when you get to 1 minute, and I think you know that I'm pretty generous with time if you're trying to make a point of something that you'd like us to know. So, Carol Bolenberg is first. Carol, you have 3 minutes, and I'm gonna start right now, okay?
Thank you. Last time I talked, I just kind of was more formal, and today I just want to be more from my heart. When I went to Orchard, I was not prepared for what I found. I can't believe the transformations I saw. I can't believe the success of the students. I can't believe the change in their attitudes throughout the school year. I was amazed. I was surprised. The things I saw were like the support the teachers gave them I've never seen. And I've worked for the district for like 27 years, and I've never seen this level of support. The one-on-one that I'm able to give them there that I haven't been able to give at other schools that I've worked at is just amazing. It makes the difference. It makes me proud to be part of their journey, part of their success. And the family that's there, and I don't just mean the staff family, I mean the student family. These kids are family to each other. They hang out together. They're buddies. They do things together. They are a family. And that is because of the size. That is because they know each other outside of school more than they would if they were at a high school where it's so big and they can't hardly know any of them. That they really very much are a family. And the support that James gives them, I've never seen. I don't know that any other building would have that. They could do the kind of support I've seen James give these kids. That verbally talking to them. Transportation, ideals, just the support that I see James give these kids every day. When these kids walk in the door, they're greeted by the office staff, they're greeted by the teachers. They greet us because they are part of our family. I can't imagine some of these kids being successful in a bigger setting. Even if you keep them contained, it's just different. And they're being successful. I'm seeing it. I'm amazed. I am just
1 minute.
every day when I go to work, I am proud to be part of that team. I am proud to be I'm a Monroe Public School employee, whatever building I'm at. I always have been. It's one of the things I like that makes me feel good to be part of this school system. And that one just gives me the biggest pride that I've ever could have. And some of the stuff I heard here, I know that money is the issue. I know that budgets have to be balanced. And your comment, I think, about the low-hanging fruit and some of the, just some of the other comments I heard were like, I've negotiated for a while now with you guys as the negotiator for the assistants, and it's always said, no child left behind, students first, and that can't be true when it comes to the money. But what is the best for our kids? What is the best for all of the kids in Monroe Public School System? And keeping Orchard where it's at, doing what it's doing is very important. So I hope that you guys decide to keep us there, to keep the students there, to continue the program that we are part of now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Kathleen Gaftos, pronounced right? Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Gaftos. I'm mother of Xavier Felch. This is his first year at Orchard. He's been extremely successful since coming from online schooling. I'm very concerned about hearing any type of hybrid, especially for my student in particular. We are a family of ADHDers. That close, small classroom structure is what he needs. If you guys do decide to kind of consolidate things, I would really appreciate that you take into consideration that these children have a lot of troubles, whether it be, parents struggling, them particular mental health, different issues, that you keep that smaller classroom, structure in mind. I personally would like to see it stay. I benefited from Orchard. I graduated 04. I was in danger of not graduating on time. I went to Orchard for a brief period of time, got back on track, and was able to graduate from a formal high school on time. So that for me, and seeing my son excel and succeed in that environment, at first he was like, I think I'm only going to go a year, then transfer back like you did, Mom. Now that he's there, he's like, I want to be here. This is where I want to be to continue. So it sounds like there's a lot going on and a lot more to be discussed. And I don't know if the board will be taking part in that, pending your decision, whether it's 2 or 4 closing Orchard. But I would like to find ways to be involved. I just found out about this meeting actually today. So for me, the lack of time of being able to be involved and, have a say as a parent, if we could do a little better job on notifying people of, things of that nature if in regards to Orchard going forward, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I want to wear 2 hats while I'm up here for 3 minutes. First of all, today I am now a co-president with Matt Steele of our teachers union. So I have 2 things to talk to you about pertaining to that. First of all, I'm hoping that as you navigate these changes, that you would include the teachers union. We love working with our central administrators, but we'd really like to transition whatever changes are making or are happening just a little bit better. Please don't take this as an insult, but a little bit better than Waterloo. So if we can do that, that's a request of the teachers. So I'd love to just plant that as a seed. Second of all, if you have meetings with teachers, if you could include us as union leadership, especially if it pertains to their jobs, we'd really appreciate that too. And that includes speaking with like the Orchard staff and things like that. So I'm about to take my union hat off, but I think there's some questions that maybe the board might want to ask, and that is, do you know what the graduation rate is of Orchard compared to Trojan Academy? That might be a good question to ask and find out. How many students are currently enrolled at Orchard? As a teachers union, we're just very concerned about saving jobs. We're very concerned also, which is a priority if you ever read like our magazine in the NEA, we're always concerned about making sure that every student matters and every student counts. So we care just like you about that as well. I wondered if you knew that Orchard was funded by 3 school districts in 2017, and that Monroe took that over. So we took over a big expense because we used to fund Orchard with Erie Mason, Jefferson, and Monroe. And so in 2017, we took on that expense all on our own. And I'm not sure if it was the best decision, and that's the last thing I'd like to ask you guys to consider. Because I sit on the Community Coalition, because I sit on Icy Gray, those types of things. One of the things that I'm sad about is possibly losing Orchard. One of the things I'm kind of actually relieved about is losing Orchard, because Orchard has carried a stigma in our community for a really long time. And when we refer to things like those kids down there, we are working really hard to rebuild a certain part of our community. It's one of the reasons that the ALCC has all of these renovations happening. It's been criticized. Why are we pouring like that much money from the state into that area?
30 seconds.
It's because we really desire for all parts of our community to be considered a really great place to live, and we know it already is. But as we take care of that stigma, as we consider having all of our kids be well taken care of at the high school, there's no down there anymore. And that's me not speaking as a union president. That's me speaking as someone who got to lead there for just a little while and have that same experience. And so I'm hoping that you guys consider that it might do some really great things for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Chantel.
Jen, you ready to speak?
I am Jen Poupard, and I'm the lead instructor of Trojan Academy. First, I just wanted to say that tonight I heard a lot about kids being disrupted from their learning environment, which I totally understand. But I just want to look at this as an opportunity for these kids, because the things we do offer at the high school that unfortunately Orchard doesn't offer, and I heard what you said, Mary, about the tight-knit community. We've worked very hard to create that tight-knit community within Trojan Academy at the high school. But the high school does come with other things that Orchard just doesn't have. Like, we have our CT program, we have our gym classes, our art classes, our music program, the list goes on. We have ProMedica in our building that our kids use all the time. There's just things at the high school that Orchard doesn't provide. I see this as an opportunity for us to work with the Orchard staff to make a better program than what we already have for these kids. I don't want you guys to think that we are creating a disadvantage for a student who didn't succeed with the 6-hour day at Monroe. I'm getting very emotional, sorry. I saw the mom come up here, and I'm like, I hope she knows that we have the best interest of all students. I'm a special ed teacher. I have been for 18 years. That's my specialty. We look at each kid as an individual, and we try to provide whatever is best for that student, and we will continue to do that. And I don't know how many students are at Orchard right now. We have 17 seniors who have already finished their requirements for graduation this year. We are projected to have 35 graduates through Trojan Academy this year. We've had 24 in the last 2 years graduate, or last year was 34. 10 the first year, 24 last year, this year 35. So it is working for kids, and I just want everybody to know, I don't think even the Orchard staff knows what we're doing in Trojan Academy. And I would love to sit down and have those conversations with you, with the staff at Orchard, but this hasn't been a decision, so we haven't been able to have those conversations just yet. But I am excited for that, because I think this is a great opportunity for all students who have struggled with that traditional path. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Heck.
Okay. That really concludes our agenda for this evening. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
You have a motion to adjourn.
Do I have support?
Support.
Show of hands. Thank you. The Monroe Public Schools Board of Education Special Work Session for Monday, April 13th, 2026 is adjourned and the time is 7:39.
Take care, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Okay.